On July 2nd, 2025, Sean Combs was convicted in a Manhattan federal courtroom. He was not convicted of sex trafficking. He was not convicted of racketeering conspiracy. The jury acquitted him of every major charge, then found him guilty on 2 Mann Act counts that typically carry 15 months. The judge gave him 50 months. 1 week ago, an appeal hearing asked whether that sentence should exist at all. This is the Diddy verdict file. Federal agents swept into the 42nd Street Hotel in Manhattan on September 16, 2024, and arrested Sean Combs as he stepped into the lobby. The paperwork that followed was blunt and sprawling, a 14-page federal indictment listing 3 charges. First, racketeering conspiracy under Title 18 United States Code, Section 1962, subsection C. Prosecutors accused Combs of running Bad Boy Entertainment and its web of affiliates as a criminal enterprise, orchestrating illegal acts for profit and protection. Second, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, charged under Title 18 United States Code, Section 1591. The government alleged Combs recruited and compelled women, including Cassie Ventura and an anonymous Jane Doe, to cross state lines for commercial sex acts. The third charge, violation of the Mann Act, Title 18 United States Code, Section 2421, alleged that Combs transported individuals across state lines to engage in prostitution, a law dating back over a century, often used in cases where the government can prove travel but not coercion. The indictment's language painted a picture of power wielded as a weapon. Prosecutors described a hierarchy where employees arranged freak-off parties, distributed drugs, and enforced silence through intimidation and blackmail. The narrative in the courtroom was as much about control as it was about crime. Defense lawyers, in turn, called the charges a stretch, an attempt to criminalize consensual relationships and adult choices, arguing the government had overreached and blurred the line between abuse and criminal conspiracy. Bail was denied at the first hearing. The court cited flight risk and the potential for witness tampering, keeping Combs in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn as pretrial motions stacked up. For months, the case hung in legal limbo, with every filing and hearing dissected by the press. The stakes were enormous. Racketeering and trafficking carried the threat of decades in prison, while the Mann Act counts, historically treated as lesser offenses, were rarely headline material. Yet, as the indictment made clear, every count would matter. The stage was set for a trial that would test the limits of federal power, celebrity influence, and the meaning of justice itself. Inside the federal courtroom, the government began its case with a single, unblinking image. A hotel surveillance video from March 2016, admitted as Exhibit 75, opened the presentation. The footage, retrieved from the Intercontinental Los Angeles after a 2024 search warrant, showed Sean Combs striking Cassie Ventura in a hallway. A hotel security officer testified that he handed the original digital file directly to U.S. Marshals, and a forensic analyst confirmed the video's authenticity, describing frame-by-frame analysis and matching hash values. The jury watched the full, unedited clip. Faces of bystanders were blurred, but the violence was unmistakable. Days later, Cassie Ventura took the stand. Her testimony, entered as Exhibit 102, recounted years of control and fear. She described what she called freak-offs, drug-fueled parties where, she said, women were pressured or forced into sexual acts, sometimes filmed, sometimes threatened with exposure. She identified bruises on her arms in photographs, recalled the scent of baby oil on her skin, and pointed to seized items, bottles, keycards, and text messages as proof that the abuse was not isolated or accidental. Forensic nurses and digital analysts backed up her account, linking physical evidence and metadata to the events she described. The defense countered with a starkly different story. They argued the relationships were messy but consensual, and that the video captured a private fight, not a criminal enterprise. Defense attorneys focused on the government's framing, calling it an attempt to criminalize adult choices and to retroactively treat ambiguous moments as evidence of a larger conspiracy. But as the trial unfolded, the evidence, the video, the testimony, and the seized items became the backbone of a case that would leave the public, the industry, and the law itself at odds over what justice should look like. 12 jurors sat for 8 weeks, dissecting every exhibit and hour of testimony, but their decision landed like a split atom. On July 2nd, 2025, the clerk read the verdict form in open court. Not guilty on the headline charges, racketeering conspiracy, and both counts of sex trafficking. Guilty on 2 counts, transporting Cassie Ventura and an anonymous woman known only as Jane across state lines to engage in prostitution. The Mann Act, a law more than a century old, became the sole basis for conviction in a case that had promised to test the boundaries of federal power and celebrity impunity. The jury's note, filed at 3:12 in the afternoon, captured the divide. The jury was unable to reach a unanimous finding on Count 1, racketeering conspiracy, Count 2, sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, and Count 4, sex trafficking of Jane. The jury was unanimous that the defendant is guilty on Count 3 and Count 5, transportation to engage in prostitution. Deadlock on the most serious allegations. Agreement only on the lesser, travel-based counts. The verdict form, stamped and entered into the record, left the courtroom in a state of suspended outrage, each side claiming vindication, neither satisfied. The contradiction was immediate and glaring. A defendant convicted, but not as a kingpin or trafficker. Instead, the law that finally stuck was one designed for cases where travel could be proved, but coercion could not. As the judge polled each juror, the split was clear, not just in the charges, but in the story the law could tell. This is the Diddy verdict file, a case that found guilt, but never consensus on what true justice should look like. Judge Arun Subramanian delivered the sentence in a packed Manhattan courtroom, his words echoing above the low hum of reporters and lawyers. 50 months in federal prison, more than 3 times the term most Mann Act convictions bring. The guidelines point to a typical range of just 12 to 15 months. Instead, the judge called out what he saw as a pattern of exploitation and intimidation, referencing the gravity of the coercive environment built around Combs. He cited not just the travel proved to the jury, but the entire record of abuse and power, the same conduct for which the jury had refused to convict. In the sentencing transcript, Judge Subramanian made it plain that the conviction on the 2 Mann Act counts is serious, but the evidence of force, fraud, or coercion, issues the jury found no proof of, cannot be ignored. The defendant's pattern of intimidation and control justifies a term beyond the guideline range. Legal analysts quickly ran the numbers. The average Mann Act sentence in federal court is 15 months. Combs' projected release date, if the term stands, is April 25, 2028. Defense attorney Alexandra Shapiro called the outcome a perversion of justice, arguing that the judge had punished her client for crimes the jury had rejected. Victims' advocates, on the other hand, called the sentence a slap on the wrist, a fraction of what they believed the abuse demanded. The system's contradiction was now written into the judgment, a sentence too harsh for some, too lenient for others, and built on a legal gray zone, evidence that convinced a judge but not a jury. This is the Diddy verdict file. The verdict sent tremors through the music world and financial markets in equal measure. Usher, speaking to Forbes, insisted Diddy's catalog should be judged apart from his personal life, while 50 Cent mocked the spectacle from the stage, turning the trial into fodder for rivalry and ridicule. Behind the headlines, a different kind of reckoning unfolded. Bad Boy Entertainment's valuation, once estimated at over $1 billion, plummeted to somewhere between $400 million and $600 million in the months after the conviction. Major brand partners quietly stepped back. Streaming numbers for the classic catalog dipped, and new artist signings stalled as the label's risk profile shifted overnight. Combs' sons, Christian and Justin, tried to pivot, announcing a partnership with Zeus Network for a documentary series, a move that some saw as an attempt to seize the narrative and protect the family brand. But even that announcement, shared on social media, lacked the backing of a formal press release or public contract, leaving industry insiders skeptical about its future. Meanwhile, the legal fallout continued to mount. 3 separate civil lawsuits, each alleging sexual assault or breach of contract, remained active in federal court, threatening to further erode the empire's shrinking value. The financial shockwave rippled outward, touching not just Combs, but every artist, investor, and executive with a stake in Bad Boy's legacy. In a business built on image and alliances, the contradiction of a guilty verdict without the expected convictions left the industry scrambling to decide what, if anything, could be salvaged. A single filing changed the stakes again. On October 1st, 2025, Alexandra Shapiro lodged the formal notice of appeal in the Second Circuit, challenging the 50-month sentence as an overreach that punished Sean Combs for crimes the jury had refused to confirm. Her brief argued that Judge Subramanian had mixed and matched theories, using acquitted racketeering and trafficking evidence to justify a term more than triple the guideline for a first-time Mann Act conviction. The government countered that the judge's discretion allowed consideration of the full record, not just what the jury endorsed. The panel fast-tracked the case, setting oral argument for April 9, 2026. In that Manhattan courtroom, a judge pressed both sides. Could a sentence stand when it drew power from conduct the jury had explicitly rejected? Shapiro insisted the law was clear: no punishment for acquitted acts. The government pointed to precedent, arguing judges can weigh all relevant facts. Months later, no opinion has been issued. The sentence hangs in limbo, and with it, the meaning of the Diddy verdict file remains unsettled. Tonight, the system delivered a verdict that satisfied no one. Convicted, but not of what the world expected, and sentenced far above the norm, yet still fighting for freedom. Justice fractures along every line. The appeal looms. This is the Diddy verdict file, where accountability, reputation, and doubt now collide.